All right, we're officially live on YouTube and we're right at start time. So I'm going to go ahead and do a brief introduction. Oh my gosh, people are in here. We see someone calling in from San Diego. That is awesome. Someone said, looking forward to this. We are too. Thanks for being here. My name's Caroline Nickerson. I'm with the SciStarter team. And I'm so great. And someone just said hello from Oakland. Welcome. We're so glad you're here. So I'm with SciStarter. I wanted to give a big thank you to all of us California for a wonderful Citizen Science Month series. This is the final event in the CitSci Month series. But that being said, this isn't the last you've heard of Citizen Science or All of Us California. And we're going to describe in detail during this presentation how you can stay involved and continue moving research forward. Thank you as well to the Network of the National Library of Medicine for their support of Citizen Science Month. And as I mentioned, I am from SciStarter, which is a global citizen science organization that connects you to the real science you can do. So before we get into the nitty gritty of what citizen science is, as well as hear from our two featured speakers today from All of Us California and UCSF, we have some polls for you because we just want to gauge your level of knowledge and where you might be coming from. Because this is an event for you. We want to make sure that we're addressing the things you want to talk about. So our first question is, have you ever participated in a citizen science project before? And if you're watching on YouTube, feel free to just let your make your voice heard in the comments on YouTube. But if you're on Zoom, please go ahead and vote. All right, so people are voting. Get those votes in, everybody. I'll give you maybe 3 more seconds to vote. So 3, 2, 1, and we're going to end the poll. I'll share those results. So it looks like the majority of you, 57%, have not participated in a citizen science project before, but 37% of you have, which is super cool. All right, and our next question is, have you ever heard of SciStarter before? Just out of curiosity. So get those answers in. And if you haven't, that's great because I'll be able to tell you about it, which is exciting for me. And if you have, also great. All right, so people are voting. I'll give you all a few more seconds to vote. 3, 2, 1. So I'm about to end the poll and end poll. And we'll share those results. So it looks like the majority of you have not heard of SciStarter before, but 8% of you have. And 3% of you are unsure. That's totally okay. I'm going to tell you everything you need to know to get started with SciStarter and citizen science. All right. Our next question is, have you ever heard of All of Us? Oh, wow. Almost everyone has. If you're not sure, that's okay too. You can answer unsure as well. I'll give you all a few more seconds to vote. Three, 2, 1. I'm about to end the poll and end poll. Share those results. So it looks like 92% of you have heard of All of Us before, but 8% of you haven't. Now we have a follow-up question for you. Have you ever participated in All of Us? So go ahead and get your votes in. Yes, no, unsure. Have you ever participated in All of Us before? All right. Oh my gosh, wow. This is really interesting. I'll give you all a few more seconds to vote. All right, and I'm going to end the poll. And we'll share those results. So it looks like 93% of you have participated in All of Us before, but 8% of you haven't. So I'm going to stop sharing those results there. Now we have our last question. We just want to know what category best describes you. And you're welcome to select all that apply. So are you an aspiring citizen scientist, a parent of an aspiring citizen scientist, a teacher, an educator, a troop leader, etc.? Are you a librarian or part of a library staff? Are you a researcher or a practitioner? Are you just a bored person on the internet? or are you none of these things? All right, we're going to give you a few more seconds to vote. Interesting results here too. All right, 3, 2, 1, and I'm going to end the poll. So it looks like quite a few of you are aspiring citizen scientists, but the majority of you identify with none of these categories, and several of you are bored people on the internet. So hopefully we fix that today, and you are entertained and educated by today's presentation. So that being said, I'm going to pass the mic to Dr. Hyatt from the University of California, San Francisco. He's going to speak about cancer and climate change. After that, he'll be followed by David Bolger from All of Us California to talk about this exciting precision medicine study. And I'll be wrapping us up at the very end by talking about citizen science and some of the featured projects from the network of the National Library of Medicine. So that being said, Dr. Hyatt, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Dr. Robert Hyatt. My friends and family call me Bob, or Bobby, or Ra, or Rob. They all work. I'm happy to be here this morning to talk to you a little bit. I'm a physician scientist, a person who has been trained in medicine and who practiced medicine for 30 years, but now I focus on science and research. I have a lot of interests in research, but mainly around cancer and the causes of cancer and its prevention and early detection. So I'm going to talk with you today about a example of the kind of work that I have done that I hope will be of interest to you. So this is thinking about cancer and climate change. So climate change is something on all of our minds, and cancer is also. So what's the connection between them? Caroline's going to advance the slides, so I'll mention every time I want her to do that. And the first advance, Caroline, is now. So here's a quote from a colleague of mine at the University of California, San Francisco. It was made in 2019. So Richard Feacham is an internationally known scientist who works on global problems and malaria. And he said, there are only four, remember this is before COVID, there are only 4 scenarios that could actually kill hundreds of millions of people. Nuclear war, meteorites, and pandemics are all merely feasible. That's what he said then. But climate change is already underway, which is the focus of what we're talking about today. Now, since then, of course, we've had a pandemic, and you can see that it's not only feasible, but what its effects have been. And I'll come back to that at the end of my talk. Okay, next slide, Caroline. So this is a pretty dramatic slide showing that climate change is already underway. This is the San Francisco skyline when it looks like it should on the left and when it looks like it did during the wildfires last year. This was a horrendous event, and one that shocked us all here. Not only caused problems health-wise, but made dramatic the potential impact of fires, which are a direct consequence of climate change. Next slide. So the basic statement is that climate change will have a broad impact on many things, including higher temperatures, poor air quality, wildfires, changing rainfall patterns, extreme weather events like hurricanes, droughts, and the collapse of fisheries and agriculture, and rising sea levels. So these are all things we know are likely to happen. Next slide. This is a little complicated. Let me walk you through it. So this is how this all works, and I've tried to simplify it. But at the top, so we're going to go from the top of this table to the bottom. So at the top, we have greenhouse gas emissions. That's the main culprit of climate change, coming from fossil fuels and industry and our daily activities. And that has an impact on climate change, which in turn has an impact on, if you look at the left-hand side, cancer-related effects, which affect, in many cases, just one primary site of cancer. And then there are influencing factors. And when you look at the center of the table, you can see that the effects include droughts and wildfires, heat, high heat temperatures, sea level rise, and extreme weather events. These factors in turn then have cancer-related effects on air pollution, on human behavior, on food insecurity, on water pollution, and infections. And all these things have relevance to health in general, as well as to cancer. Air pollution is mainly going to be have an effect on lung cancer. Human behaviors and outdoor activity are mainly going to have an effect on skin cancers. Food insecurity, agricultural yield, and quality of nutrition, as well as water pollution, are going to have effects on gastrointestinal cancers. And we're not sure about infections, but there are also possible changes in infectious causes of cancer. The things that are going to influence all of these things, however, are changes in our health system. So human resources, transportation, service delivery, the supply chain, all of these things we depend on for a healthy healthcare access and healthcare system. And they are all likely to be at risk from disruptions from climate change. Next slide. So a lot of people don't think about climate change having an impact on health, but the effects are becoming clear. Most of what's been discussed with regard to climate change has been with regard to infectious disease and other acute conditions, as well as the environmental effects. Now, at our university, for example, the attention has been now directed in the last year or two toward more things that have to do with climate change. So we have an evidence to policy initiative at the Global Health Sciences program. We have an Office of Sustainability that makes us think about what we're doing in our daily lives and how we're building buildings and maintaining them. And then the Climate Change and Mental Health Task Force. So with the effects of climate change on our mental health. And then the students, the medical students, have a group on climate change and health. So it's getting diffused across our university as well as others. If you want to read more about this, why climate crisis is a health crisis, you can go to ucsf.edu/magazine and climate crisis and see more detail. Next slide, Caroline. So here's some of the effects. So we can expect health-related disorders from heat stress and heat-related kidney diseases. Already during periods of high temperature, we've seen massive deaths in places like Chicago or India. It is an effect of dehydration, isolation, and lack of resilience to these kinds of stresses. We're also seeing respiratory disorders exacerbated by fine particulate pollutants. And this manifests itself right away in terms of asthma and allergic disease. We are obviously seeing changes in infectious diseases because the vectors, the mosquitoes, the other insects that carry diseases are influenced by the climate, and they change their distribution and the intensity of their effect on human diseases. Food insecurity is a way of describing situations where nutrient foods are either absent or diminished, or their quality is lowered in some way. And this can happen through reduced crop yields and increased plant diseases. This too will have an effect on many different health conditions, including cancer. And then finally, mental health disorders. So some people are stressed out by these fires, for example, and suffer post-traumatic stress problems as well as depression. So we wrote up this overview on climate change and cancer and we published it in a journal called Lancet Oncology, which goes into more detail. Next slide. This is my second and last sort of tabular slide, and again, I'll walk you through this. So in cancer, we frequently talk about the cancer continuum. And the cancer continuum is what you see at the top of this table. So it starts from studies of cause or etiology. And then we're concerned about prevention. This is before there's been any sign of cancer. Then we want to detect cancers early so that we can prevent their consequences. Then the cancer gets diagnosed, and then it's treated. And then people who are successfully treated have a period of survivorship during which there are a lot of other issues to be concerned about. And we have more and more cancer survivors due to the success of our treatment approaches. Excuse me. At each one of these steps along the cancer continuum, you have different things to worry about in terms of climate change. So in terms of etiology, we're concerned about all the things I've already mentioned: air pollution, ultraviolet radiation, chemical toxins, the food supply, and infections. And then in terms of prevention, we're worried about the changes in the risk and maintenance of recommended health behaviors like diet, physical activity, and sun protection. And that leads into changes in our patterns of screening. You know, during COVID, did you get a mammogram? No. And, you know, or other sorts of screening. And we've seen that disruptions in the health system from the COVID epidemic can have major effects on cancer practices, prevention, and early detection. And this extends to treatment, imaging, medical supplies, communications, surveillance systems as well. And in the survivorship period, disruption in psychological support and health promotion can have an effect there too. So the statement here is that all along the process of cancer development, detection, diagnosis, treatment, and survivorship, effects of climate change are likely to be observed. Next slide. Now, one of the main mechanisms that we can understand now is the effect of air pollution on lung cancer. So the primary cause, as you all know, is tobacco use. And lung cancer, you may not know, is the primary cause of death from cancer worldwide. In 2017, which is the last year we have data when this slide was made, there were 2.2 million new cases and 1.9 million deaths from lung cancer. Now, although tobacco is the #1 cause, about 15% of lung cancer is caused by what we refer to as particulate matter, or PM. And PM, particulate matter that's 2.5 microns in size, is small enough to get into the air sacs of the lung and cause inflammation and cancer. And so about 15% of those cancers caused by particulate matter can be attributed to climate change. And this has increased about 20% over the last 3 decades. So this is a worry. Next slide. And you can see how wildfires, this is us in California. This is increasing particulate matter big time, temporarily, but you know, for weeks. Next slide. So these wildfires, which we expect to have more of, this year is another drought year in California. We're already being told to conserve water. People are getting ready to fight fires. We're getting smarter about how to deal with it, but they're going to likely increase, and they're going to have impacts on the air, not only in these particulate matter PM 2.5, but also generating toxins like things called polyaromatic, hydrocarbons, and benzene and formaldehyde. So all these things are not just the effects of burning wood, but the effects of chemicals that are in buildings and other places that can be generated by these fires. Next slide. So skin cancers are also likely to increase. And the way this works is that, as heat increases, people want to get outside. They want to, cool off. So they're not fully clothed. They're not protecting themselves. And so the effects of the sun and ultraviolet radiation can be increased. It's hard to predict because it depends a lot on human behavior and whether people try to protect themselves or not. We also expect that the decreased availability of nutritional foods are going to have effects on cancers, specifically colorectal and breast cancer. And the increased exposure to these toxins that I've mentioned already is another issue. So we have in this country Superfund sites, which are places where the Environmental Protection Agency is designated as containing high levels of toxins, which can be harmful to health. And there are over 2,500 of these in the United States in flood-prone areas. So you can imagine what would happen in a flood where the chemicals that are in these sites get leached into the flood waters, which get carried everywhere. This is a huge concern. So also you should know that during wildfires, there's a lot of groundwater contamination, which just increases this kind of toxic issue. And we're already finding in places like Switzerland and elsewhere that as glaciers melt, the contamination from the air is getting into drinking water. Next slide. This is an example of a chemical fire in the biolab facility in Louisiana, in Lake Charles. This just happened last year, 2020, after Hurricane Laura. So the hurricane causes problems in systems maintenance, which in turn can lead to fires and toxic consequences. So these effects are not direct all the time, but you can see dramatically the impact of climate change events. Next slide. And here's a map of the United States showing where these Superfund sites are. So what you notice when you look at their distribution is that a lot of them are on the coast, especially on the East Coast in New England, but also in California and Florida and the Gulf Coast. So they're the places that are likely to be flooded during sea rise and climate change events. So this is the source of the concern, is their geographic location as well. Next slide. So all of that is worrisome enough, but perhaps the most likely and profound thing that can happen with climate change is a disruption in the healthcare system. A functioning healthcare system is necessary for cancer prevention, detection, diagnosis, treatment, and follow-up. It's a very complicated process to detect, treat, and take care of people with cancer. But all of that could be at risk with disruptions in the system itself. Next slide. So what can we do about it? Climate change scientists use two words. One of them is mitigation and the other is adaptation. And with mitigation, it tries to reduce or slow the effects of greenhouse gases. This is what we hear about when we're being made conscious of the effects of fossil fuels and car functioning and so forth. Adaptation recognizes that there's some things we can't do much about. It's already happening, and we need to find ways to live with it. For example, sea rise is inevitable because the Greenland glacier is melting and it's unstoppable. And that's going to result in some level of sea rise, which will affect places like low-lying areas in Manhattan and Louisiana and maybe even San Francisco. So how do we adapt to that? So then we should know that there's a lot we can do to both mitigate and adapt to the impact of climate change, and we should be doing both. You don't take sides in this. It's just a term that helps us understand that some things are already on their way and we need to adapt to them. Next slide. So efforts to mitigate the impact of climate change include further intensity on society changes to decrease our dependency on fossil fuels. the reduction of industrial waste and byproducts, plastic bags, the protection and preservation of the natural environment that generates a lot of the protective effects on the climate, like the rainforests and multiple species and wildness actually are all very important for the health of the planet. So there's some good news coming from the Biden administration on these kinds of things, and we should give it our full support and participation. Next slide. Likewise, in terms of cancer, it's important, as this presentation is doing, to educate the public to act on the adverse effects of air pollution, on behavioral change, to reduce the exposure to ultraviolet radiation, and the kinds of protective measures that can be taken to minimize exposures during wildfires. So in California, we have some places that are being provided for people to escape to get a cleaner air and protection from the effects. And these may need to be better organized. Next slide. So a strong message here that climate change is putting a tremendous stress on health systems. And in many parts of the world, these health systems are really not well equipped to deal and prevent cancer already. So climate change is just making that more of a challenge. And here's the COVID piece. So if anybody doubted that our health systems and infrastructure were vulnerable to these kind of huge events that can be expected with climate change, you just have to look at what's happened with the COVID epidemic and how stressed out we've been in many parts of our country, and how stressed the system is now in India, where they are totally overwhelmed and really can't deal with the challenge of the pandemic. The same sort of thing could happen with the effects of climate change. So we need to bolster the strength and the resilience of our health systems generally to be ready for these kind of impacts while we work on our own personal behaviors and practices. Next slide. I think that's going to be, this is maybe the last slide. So the kind of preparation which I just mentioned is really important for those of us that work in the health systems. So we need to be thinking about how we can prevent, diagnose, and treat individuals when we are under periods of stress. So we can't just make things work with what we've got now. We've got to think about what it will take to double our efforts if needed. And I've basically already said what the bottom of the slide shows. So we need to take a lesson from the pandemic as a warning of what we need to be prepared for. Next slide. Yes, that's all for me. I'm going to turn it over now to my colleague, David Bolger.
Thank you, Dr. Hyatt. Very interesting to learn about the role that climate change plays in our health systems and some things we can do to protect ourselves from the impacts. Hello, everyone. I'm David. I wanted to tell you about the All of Us program. First, a little about me. I am not a scientist, but I do like to make observations. I love to hear about discoveries that can make our lives and the planet we live on better. I care about human health, and I care about helping other people. So a few years ago, I learned about a way in which I could contribute to a health science project by sharing information about myself that could help researchers better understand health in the United States. So I signed up to participate in the All of Us research program. And I felt like I was making a contribution that might benefit people in the future, people in my community, people who may have a similar life background as myself, and others. And since then, I have become very involved in All of Us as a member of All of Us California and a coordinator at one of the All of Us locations at UCSF. Next slide, please. So I think of All of Us as a very large health science project. It will involve 1 million or more people living in the US, and the purpose is to speed up health research on many health conditions that affect people living here, from California to New York and everywhere else in the country. Next slide, please. So we all want to live long, healthy lives, but there are many questions that health scientists, researchers, and non-scientists like myself have that we don't know the answers to. You may have wondered, how can we prevent pain? How can we prevent chronic pain? Why are certain people really healthy? Why do some people get really sick and others don't? Next slide, please. So if you've never heard of precision medicine, it's an emerging approach for disease treatment and prevention that takes into account individual variability in lifestyle, socioeconomics, environment, and biology. It's a new way to think about how each of us can receive the best care possible based on our unique makeup. And in order to further precision medicine, the All of Us program is collecting lifestyle, health, environmental, and biological data from 1 million people or more. Next slide, please. So who can participate in All of Us? If you're an adult over 18 living anywhere in the United States, you can participate. The first step is to go on the website. You would create an account and give your consent. Some people share their electronic health records. Others answer health surveys on different aspects of health. There's a lifestyle survey, for example. There's another one on your family background. It's up to you how much you would like to share. Some people provide a blood sample and have their physical measurements taken. The program can also give information back to you that you might find interesting. For instance, you can decide if you would like your DNA results returned to you, if you are interested in learning about your ancestry traits, where your family comes from, or health-related DNA information. Next slide, please. This is one of our locations at UCSF Medical Center, Mission Bay, where All of Us participants can enroll. And we have recently reopened with safety modifications in place. And the next slide, please. So UCSF Health is part of the California Precision Medicine Consortium. For those of you that may not be in the Bay Area, we welcome you to join at any of our other locations throughout California. And you can see them all listed here. There's UC Davis, UC Irvine, USC and Cedars Sinai in LA, and UC San Diego. And the next slide, please. Another aspect of All of Us that I think is really exciting is that you can explore some of the data that has been shared by members who are participating in All of Us right now. So you can see the results of what people have contributed and different characteristics of the cohort. Whether you are a health science researcher or a person like me who is interested in health, the Research Hub is open for you to explore. And the Research Hub also consists of two parts. There is a public section and a researcher section. So the public section has data snapshots. There is an interactive data browser. there's also a Survey Explorer. So you're welcome to check it out, and you can see information that participants have shared. There's also a more restricted resource that you have to apply for access, and that's the Researcher Workbench. And that's a cloud-based, that includes a cloud-based platform designed to execute rapid, hypothesis-driven research. And the next slide, please. So I'm almost finished. I just want to share that for more information about all of us and how to participate, please visit our website. Here's a QR code that you can take a picture of that will take you directly there. And there's our phone number. Feel free to call me. I mean, it's our phone number, but I'm the one that answers it. So feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions. And the next slide, please. And based on the poll that Caroline did in the beginning, it looks like many of you are not only familiar with all of us, but you are currently participating. So that is really fantastic. So thank you. I just want you to know that your contributions towards this project are important and may help advance research for a healthier future. Some of you may have even received our newsletter that went out this week from all of us at UCSF. If you are not part of the All of Us program, but you're interested in health, maybe helping others and being part of something that's really historic, you are welcome to learn more and join. So we really do believe that the future of health begins with you. So thank you again. And I'll now hand it back to you, Caroline.
Awesome. Thank you, David. That was great. And I wanted to also say, for those of you who might not be in California, you can do All of Us anywhere in the States. I know at an event earlier this week, someone was like, is there an All of Us Pennsylvania? And we said, yes, indeed, there is. So for you Californians, you get to benefit from the awesome All of Us California. And then for folks across the United States, you're in good hands as well with all the other All of Us's too. It's really exciting, like you said, David, the fact that so many people who are in the Zoom with us today have participated in All of Us, because I think we'll have a really robust Q&A section because of that, about your talk and Dr. Hyatt's talk. So that being said, I'm going to quickly tell you all about a citizen science project. So you've gotten some really great food for thought today, and information about All of Us and ways that you can move health research forward with this exciting precision medicine study. I'm offering one more little idea for you before we proceed into Q&A. I'm going to quickly showcase one of our featured projects on SciStarter's side for Citizen Science Month. But first and foremost, really quickly, millions of people enjoy science and nature. And based on the fact that you all have done All of Us and have heard of All of Us and are, in fact, chose to come to this event, I bet you're in this group. I bet you really love going outside and looking at birds and butterflies, or maybe you're really curious about how the brain works, or maybe you like looking up at constellations. Whatever it is, I bet you just love the world around you and you love trying to understand it. And the great news is thousands of scientists need volunteers. One thing we always say at SciStarter is researchers don't have enough eyes, ears, and perspectives to know everything there is to know, to answer every question that needs to be answered. That's why it's so amazing to us that we can come together and leverage the power of the crowd as concerned citizens, as people who want to make a difference, and start answering these research questions by participating in citizen science projects. So like David, I am also not a professional scientist. I am a citizen scientist. I actually studied Chinese when I was in school. Mandarin Chinese is what my degree is in. But I ended up in this line of work because I started monitoring monarch butterfly populations because I wanted to help a local researcher understand their populations. So I would go outside, I would indicate when I saw a monarch butterfly, where I saw it, and those counts that I contributed, that data, that information that I sent into that research project helped the project understand if monarch populations were doing well, or if those butterflies potentially needed some help. And that's just one example. Citizen science is as diverse as science itself. It's everything from, of course, astronomy, biodiversity, to health, to zoology, and everything in between. If there's a science for something, there's a way that you can engage as a citizen scientist. But sometimes they can't find each other. These researchers who need your help can't find people like you who are so passionate about making a difference. That's where SciStarter comes in. We connect them. We connect you to the real science that you can do. And this is the last day of Citizen Science Month. I did want to mention that. You can go to citizensciencemonth.org to see some of the featured projects we had for this month. This is actually my penultimate event. I have one more event later today, which is a kids event that you're welcome to come to. You can find it on citizensciencemonth.org. But that being said, citizen science is not just during April. We do it year round. So what is citizen science? Ultimately, it's a collaboration between researchers and those of us who are curious, concerned, and motivated to make a difference. When you're participating in citizen science, usually you're either collecting data or analyzing data for an ongoing research project. And data is simply information. Data can be, pictures you take. Data can be notes that you take about what you see. Data could just be your own perceptions about what's going on in your community. And you can analyze data in a lot of different ways too for different citizen science projects. In fact, one of our Citizen Science Month featured projects, the Stall Catchers Project, they ask people to play an online game. And by playing this online game, you're actually annotating blood vessels for researchers at Cornell University and the Human Computation Institute. And by making those annotations, you're helping them answer research questions about Alzheimer's disease. So, and you can find that featured project on citizensciencemonth.org, as well as scistarter.org/NLM. So citizen science, one thing we always say at SciStarter, it allows us to turn our curiosity about the world into impact. And anybody, anywhere, of any age, with any background, can be a citizen scientist. I'm actually going to skip this video for time because I think we're going to have a really interesting Q&A section. But this is the SciStarter website. So when you come to SciStarter, you can find over 3,000 projects, events, and tools. I think some of you mentioned that you were researchers. So if you have opportunities for folks to discover, you can add those to the SciStarter platform. Or even if you just plan an event as a, for your own community, add that to SciStarter and interesting people might show up. During Citizen Science Month, I noticed that faith communities were adding events. There was a group of, there's a mosque in Chicago that did an ecology citizen science event, which I thought was really cool. Or sometimes Girl Scouts will add events that they're doing where they just pick a citizen science project they found on SciStarter and they do it with their Girl Scout troop. And so much more. There are over 3,000 opportunities for you to discover to turn your curiosity into impact with SciStarter. That being said, we totally recognize that 3,000 opportunities can be a little overwhelming. So if you want an easy place to start, you can go to scistarter.org/NLM. That stands for National Library of Medicine. That's another place where we're showcasing our Citizen Science Month featured projects. On this page, you can make your SciStarter account. You can access a tutorial in English and Spanish that introduces you to citizen science. And you can discover today's project for this event that I'm going to talk about, which is I See Change. So I See Change is a global community of people who are documenting the real life effects of climate change and contributing to solutions. Basically, what this project asks you to do is just look around and describe what you see in terms of the environment. And they ask you to give context based on your own lived experience. So if one example is, I'm going to use a Florida example because that's where I'm based. I See Change has been asking people across South Florida and in Miami specifically to indicate when they see flooding. So if you see flooding on a sunny day, or if you see flooding in an area where you've never seen flooding before on a particular sidewalk, for example, they ask you to safely snap a picture of it, describe what you're seeing, give that context, and then send that to the project. And when enough people make these observations, I See Change is able to get really robust research results. What you're sending to I See Change is ultimately qualitative data. It's words and it's pictures about what you see in your own life. And IC change pairs that with quantitative data like inches of rainfall or temperature measurements, for example, to get a complete picture of what's going on in the environment and what might be changing. So it's as simple as this. You make an account, you post what you see, and then you learn from other people. You can find IC Change on scistarter.org/NLM. And IC Change is a SciStarter affiliate project. So if you make your IC Change account with the same email address you use to make your SciStarter account, then all the number and frequency of your contributions will track in your SciStarter dashboard, which can be valuable for you. I know some folks might be students, for example. If you need volunteer credit, you can use that as evidence of volunteer time. Or if you just want bragging rights, like I know I do, you can use that as bragging rights and look back at the end of the year and see all these different citizen science projects you contribute to. So for IC Change specifically, these are some success stories and some examples of the project. So in Los Angeles, California, posts about drought-stressed trees led to a deep dive story about the future of urban trees in California. So enough people in their own urban community posted pictures and observations of their trees to lead to a research result about what was going on with drought-stressed trees. In New Orleans, posts have influenced stormwater engineering plans and have helped the health department understand heat waves. So people just describing what's going on with the environment in their own lives and the impact on them have helped lead to infrastructure developments as well as to health interventions. So really cool things there. And just globally, people are contributing to IC Change. So I'd love if some of you are local to San Francisco, I'd love to see some more San Francisco posts on the map. I think that would be really cool. And every post is different. The things that you see change, there may be variations in climate change, for example, hyper-locally. So your experience of climate change and how it's impacting your community may be different than your friend's experience, potentially one block over or on the other side of the city. So posts like that on IC Change are really important for understanding the hyper-local impacts of weather, climate change, and the environment. So ultimately what it's doing is IC Change is connecting people and their changing environments and looking for folks to make solutions together. If enough people post about a particular issue, that can lead to a research result, and this data-driven understanding can potentially empower positive change. And this is just another example from Miami. As you can see, people indicated the severity. So they said flooding indicated, and this is unusual. A person just took a picture, at a safe distance. They didn't get in the water, for example. They described what they saw. They gave a human impact here. They said that they were worried about the senior citizen walking through watery areas. And you may see here, it says Miami Beach, Florida. So even though you enter the exact location of where you observe something, IC Change is really respectful of privacy. And on the public feed, it won't give that exact location. It'll take it out to the city level. And the sensor inputs are complementing the qualitative data here, the pictures and the description. And here are some more examples of flooding. That's just the one I highlighted because that's the example I'm the most familiar with. That being said, I'd love if all of you started posting in San Francisco and I could use your examples on my next presentation. I think that'd be really cool. And then I also wanted to give a shout out to Claudia Sebastini from the IC Change team who set up these slides. And more Miami examples, as you can see, enough people are posting about this, that resilience leaders in Miami will have a good data set to inform their decisions about what to do in terms of infrastructure, in terms of new drainage systems, in terms of how they design sidewalks in regard to flooding. But it doesn't just have to be flooding. You can post about temperature, how you're experiencing heat, if heat is weird or unseasonal in your area. You can post about air quality. If your view of the air is obscured by wildfires, for example, you could post about that. There are so many different ways that the environment, weather, and climate can impact you, and IC Change just wants to hear from you about what you're seeing in your own community. One thing they always say is you're the expert in your own backyard. So in short, I would love for you all to participate. It's as easy as going to scistarter.org/NLM and clicking on that IC Change icon. And I'm going to actually end things here so we can do some Q&A. I see lots of things popping up in the Q&A box. So I'll put the survey in the chat in case you want to give us some feedback. And then I would love to start fielding some questions. So let's see. there's lots going on in the chat, and there's lots going on in the Q&A box. So let's start in the Q&A box, I think. That's probably the best place to start. One thing to answer in the chat, I would love to hear from you all. If you have any topics of interest for future events, or if there are any topics in particular you want to hear about for all of us, feel free to put that in the chat too. So our first Q&A question is rising sea levels. When do you anticipate this to be a problem leading to people moving out? Years away, decades away? Maybe Dr. Hyatt, do you want to take that one and tell us your assessment of rising sea levels and how they might impact human life? Looks like you're on mute.
Yes, thank you. Great questions, and really wonderful tool SciStarter has with the icy change approach. This is in science, we frequently call this technique something different, which I've actually forgotten at this point, but it's used frequently to give people a video voice, is what it's called. So it's giving people the chance to take pictures and sort of speak with the image that they see. So really exciting tool. So with regard to sea level rise, I already mentioned that this is something that we are going to expect more of, but we're already seeing it. So the Greenland ice cap glacier is melting, and sea rise is happening. And you just saw a bunch of examples of that from Caroline in Miami. It's also happened in Lower Manhattan in the financial district. And for those of you that are in San Francisco, in Mission Bay, if you've noticed that we're only about 3 feet above the bay. I think, and there are people that are concerned about when and if, or I say if and when the sea level rise is going to increase. So in terms of answering this question, it depends where you are. It's already happening, so it's not decades away. It's here, and it's happening in various ways depending upon where you're located. I should also mention, just in closing on this question, that there are some islands in the Pacific which are sinking, which are not sinking. The water level rise is engulfing them, and their water supply is becoming unusable because of salination. So whole populations in the northernmost part of North America are also having to leave where they live because of sea rise and change. So it's already happening. It's not something in the future.
That's a perfect answer and a really sobering reminder. So that's why it's so important for you all to document what you see, because it's already happening. And then for David, I noticed a lot of people are asking questions about samples and their All of Us results and DNA testing. Maybe you could speak generally on that topic for the folks tuning in.
Sure. So the All of Us program has an opportunity for participants who are taking part to provide blood and urine samples. Some of you on this call may have done so already. If you have given a blood sample, there is an option or opportunity for you to receive your DNA results. Currently, the All of Us program is returning ancestry-related results to participants who have let us know that they want them. So if you have, I'll mention that if you have not logged into your portal in a while, please do so, because there's some information on there related to that. You may have seen and completed the consent to receive your DNA results, or you may not have noticed that it's there. So that may help answer some questions about your DNA results, because I know I've been getting a lot of questions just in general about that.
Awesome. So yes, everybody, please check the portal. I know a lot of you are participants based on our poll results, so keep engaging. I know David put his number up there, so, well, not his number specifically, but the number he answers quite frequently. So you can get in touch with him as well, and via the UCSF All of Us website. And we'll share that again in a sec, that slide. Another interesting question, I think that it would be great if Dr. Hyatt can answer. Hugo asked, can someone speak to the link between precision medicine and climate change?
Yeah, I saw that. Good question, Hugo. Turns out climate change is very difficult to understand at the individual level. And all of this offers an opportunity to approach that difficulty. So most of the literature that I reviewed had to do with measuring exposures, like toxic levels or air pollution or ultraviolet light exposures. But linking that to the individual is more of a challenge. So how do you do that? Well, one of the most powerful tools for studying disease in populations are longitudinal, what are called cohort studies. So these are just exactly what All of Us is. It's characterizing a large number of people in great detail and then following them over time to see what happens. So with All of Us, because it's national and because it gives us a lot of detail about location and individuals and their exposures, we have a very precise way of assessing outcomes in terms of lung cancer, asthma, skin cancers, other health conditions, you name it, in the All of Us program. So I would say, Hugo, that the link is that climate change is a exposure. It's a broad exposure that has all the elements that I've described. And we want to know precisely its impact on different populations. So we're not making generalizations here. We're seeking to have individual information that can be applied at the local level or even amongst specific populations. That's how I would make the link.
That's such a good question. I know that we had way more questions than I think we have time to answer in our last 3 minutes. So to answer a few of the questions I see, this event was recorded and the recording is actually available right now on YouTube. You can find it on SciStarter's YouTube channel. I also put the link to it in the chat. And let's see, I think we have time for one more question. So I'll go back to the first one because I want to give them dibs because they got their question in earlier. So for Gretchen, Gretchen asked, is this edge of climate change and health impact part of the climate change plans from the current administration in DC? What are you hearing?
Can I answer that?
Yeah, that'd be great.
So I saw that question from Gretchen, and it's an important one. And I'd say that the answer is probably no, sort of. I mean, what the efforts from Washington are doing is attacking that top level area of exposure that I showed you in that table. So they're trying to reduce the greenhouse gases that lead to everything else. So fossil fuel reduction, so alternative sources of energy, all those things are critical to do in order to minimize the health effects. But I don't know whether anybody on their climate change panel or developing legislation is thinking about the downstream connections to health and to cancer. That is what we tried to do in this review, is say, okay, what are the consequences of climate change to cancer and what can we do about it? So I'm not sure our leaders are thinking in that way or in that much detail, but I hope we have a chance to help them do that.
Great, yeah, that sounds great. I think we all can have a voice. I think that's one thing we've learned from today. We can all take action and participate in projects that help us understand the world, and hopefully that understanding can make a difference in regard to mitigating climate change, or at the very least addressing it. So we're at our last minute, so I don't think we have any time for more questions. I have up on the screen the information for you all to get involved with All of Us. And remember, you can get involved anywhere in the US. I wanted to ask Dr. Hyatt and David if you had any last words of wisdom for us. Maybe Dr. Hyatt, we can start with you. Any closing messages before we go?
Well, only with regard to participation in all of us. So I personally have spent most of my life working in the field of epidemiology, where we try to understand the pattern of disease in populations. And we're always inhibited in this process by not having large enough and diverse enough samples to understand these phenomena. All of us is an answer for this. And I encourage everybody not only to sign up for, but maintain their interest in and participation in this kind of project over time, because this will give us the answers that we are looking for so many things, including the impact of climate change.
Amazing. David, do you have any final words of wisdom for us?
Oh, I agree with what Dr. Hyatt said. And I certainly encourage all of you to participate. If you are already, thank you so much. And please reach out if you have any questions. I'd be more than happy to help.
That's amazing. And yes, and for everybody watching, I know All of Us California has more exciting events come May. So make sure you follow them on social media to stay up to date with everything they have planned in May. And then on SciStarter's end, the best way to stay up to date with us is simply to make a SciStarter account. And you can do that by going to the scistarter.org/NLM page. As a reminder, the session was recorded. You can find it on SciStarter's YouTube channel. I'll also be sending a follow-up email in the coming days with a link to the recording as well. So thank you again to both of our speakers today and to the whole All of Us California team, and to all of you for watching and being here for our season finale of the Citizen Science Month All of Us California series. Bye, everybody. Have a good day.